Thank you for that kind introduction. I got a good speech here, but I'm not going to give it. Just tell you a couple stories. First story, a faculty member here at the University of Chicago in 1942 ran for the Democratic nomination for the United States Senate. He was on the city council of the city of Chicago. He was the one independent alderman out of 50. He lost in that primary. The day after he lost in the primary in 1942, he left the faculty of the University of Chicago and enlisted in the Marine Corps. His name was Paul Douglas. He still holds the record as the oldest recruit in the history of the Marine Corps. He was 50 years old. He went through basic training at Parris Island, came out with a serious war injury, lost the use of his left arm. And eventually, in 1948, ran successfully for the United States Senate. I was an intern in his office as a college student. That's when I first thought I might be interested in politics. It goes back a few years. He had a lot of projects. He was a brilliant man, a PhD in economics and such. But he also had some local interests. He once said, when I was a young man, I wanted to save the world. When I was elected to the Senate, I wanted to save the United States. At the end of my career in the Senate, I just want to save the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. He did. He did it despite the opposition of the entire Indiana delegation, the steel mills, and everybody else. He achieved that goal. The second person I want to mention to you is a former senator, preceded me in the Senate, named Paul Simon. Paul Simon was an extraordinary man. He never graduated from college, but wrote a dozen or more books, maybe 20 books during the course of his professional lifetime. One of his last books was not a great seller, but it still was a very interesting book, and it was entitled Tapped Out. And it was his speculation that in the 21st century, many of the battles around the world will be fought over clean, drinkable water. That was an observation by this man that turned out to be eminently true. So I'm lucky to stand before you as a senator from this state and to have two Pauls in my background, to be in the Senate seat that Paul Douglas once held, to have served as his intern, and also to have come out of law school and gone to work for Paul Simon. The point I want to make to you, and I'm sure everybody in this room feels it just as intensely as I do, is we are at a cusp of a turning point in this country in 6 days. The question is, where are we going as a nation? We have two extraordinary people who were here earlier. I see they've stepped out, maybe because I was speaking. Oh no, they're in the front row. Heidi Heidkamp, God bless her. So good to get to see you, my colleague. And sitting next to her, John Podesta, a Chicagoan you probably all know, who in his own capacity has done more on the environmental scene in Washington than almost any single person. I'm glad to see both of you here today. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, what's going to happen after next Tuesday? I don't know the answer to that, and the experts don't either. But here's what I do know. If the blockheads who believe that climate change is a hoax prevail, we're going to be set back. I don't know how badly or how long, but they would look at what we're doing today and say it's a waste of time and money to create this institute. They have a different view of the challenge, if there is one, and a different view of the solution. I think they're dead wrong. I think the overwhelming consensus among science, credible science in this world, lets us know that we're at a turning point, a critical moment when it comes to the future of this planet and what we do with it. We need a global effort, not just a U.S. effort, but a global effort. But we have to be in the leadership of that effort. The fact that we have such prodigious energy resources and create such a large part of the challenge gives us no choice but to be part of it. This administration, the Biden administration, passed legislation through Congress to appropriate, I think, $369 million for this effort to go underway, whether it's in hydrogen, solar, whatever it happens to be, to reduce our dependence on carbon generation fuel. We need to continue that and move into the future. And if we're going to have a successful future, a rewarding future that moves us in the right direction, We've got to take the issue of climate change and look at it more carefully. I can't think of a better place to do it than starting right here at the University of Chicago. This institute is going to create an opportunity for the first undergraduate degree in this field, as was described earlier. And it's going to give us a chance to continue in this leadership that this university has shown over the years. It's been an honor to represent you, and I'm going to continue to, and I want to make sure on the Appropriation Committee that the resources you need will be available. Thank you very much for letting me say hello to you.